Good morning.
Good morning.
Delighted to be here. With Steph and Catherine, it kind of feels like I'm home. It's the first time here, but it kind of feels like I'm home.
Yeah.
That's nice.
I know.
Really sweet. Does anyone know how many of the world's great religions came out of the English language? 0. French. Italian. Greek. Spanish?
No.
I don't know. Interesting. At least 5 of the world's major religions, and we think perhaps 6, though we can't verify the 6th one, came out of one language. Anybody know what that language is? Aramaic. The language of the man named Yeshua. It was the language of a man named Baha'u'llah. It was the language of a man named Muhammad. It was the language of a man named Zoroaster. It was the language of the Old Testament Jews, Abraham. And all of the Jewish wisdom keepers spoke one language. There's a reason why that language sourced so many religions. And sadly, in the Western world, most of us have been told that it came out of the Greeks, that the Greeks wrote it down. Now, does anybody here know any Semitic peoples? Arabs, Jews?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine these Semitic peoples saying, we have developed this flower of understanding. Greeks, we'd like you to write it down for us. Now, don't expect Greek scholars to jump up anytime soon and tell you it was all Aramaic. But if Yeshua sat in most of what are called Christian churches today, and you'll notice there are some 32,000 sects, he would say that's all Greek to me. The meanings of his key concepts and his key words have been lost. And imagine that you're the best translator of Greek or Russian into English and English into Russian in the world, and Catherine got an email about our week of workshops this week, and a gentleman from Russia wanted to come and be part of the week. And knowing that you spoke Russian and had an extra room in your house, she asked you if you'd house this person and translate for him, and you were delighted to. The fellow comes, we spend the week, we go out for lunch and dinner once or twice, and we just have a great time. And at the end of the week, I want this man to know what I think of him. I don't speak any Russian, so I ask you if you will tell him that I think he's really cool. And you turn to him in your best Russian and you say, Michael thinks you've got a low body temperature. You translated my words perfectly, but you didn't say a word about what I meant. Sadly, most of the Aramaic language, I shouldn't say it sadly, the Aramaic is idiomatic. You know, that's an idiom when I say cool. And I mean, you're really great. Most of the Aramaic key thoughts are idiomatic. And if you don't know the meaning of an idiom, you can be the best translator in the world, and you can't translate the word. It can't be done. Vladimir Lenin, a man who was responsible probably for more deaths on planet Earth than any other human being in history, said, if you want to destroy a culture, change the meaning of its words. Most of the key words in Aramaic that Yeshua thought, spoke, and taught have had their meanings changed. And in many cases become the very reverse of what the words meant. There are 5 major keys that Yeshua gave to living as a human being. And in fact, that's one of the words that's been changed. We're told if you have a body, then you must be human. My offering is that having a body does not qualify you for human life. Anybody here ever held a newborn child?
Yes.
If you would, go back to the moment where you held that newborn and share with me your word that describes the essence of the newborn. What word would that be?
Amazing.
Amazing.
Innocent.
Innocence.
Awesome.
Awesome. Now, this is a question that Jeannie and I have asked of tens of thousands of people all over the globe, and 100% of the time the answer is some variation on the theme of love. Why? Because everybody knows what human life is. It is the active presence of love. And if you do not have that, you do not have a human life. At any moment in your life, when you are not functioning as the conscious active presence of love, human life has been blotted out in you. Now, there's an interesting passage in Luke where the man named Yeshua, his name, by the way, was not Jesus, which comes from Jesus, Hail Zeus, wasn't his name. You know, they were bringing a rabbi to the Greco-Roman world. Jews were not very popular in the Greco-Roman world. So what are we going to call this guy? We're going to call him Yeshua? Well, that's not going to be accepted. But everybody knows Zeus.
Right.
Hey, Zeus. Hail, Zeus. That'll make him acceptable. Only it didn't make him acceptable. It made the Greek ideas that were put in his mouth acceptable. In this particular passage, Yeshua addresses the idea of human life. And it's kind of an interesting passage. You have to look at it carefully to really see the nuances in it. It's Luke 10:25, and what it says is this. And a scribe stood up to test him, saying, Teacher, what shall I do to inherit eternal life? Now, Yeshua knows this man is a scribe, and that this is a trap. And he knows that the man can parrot the words out of his brain that are in the scriptures about, or at least close to, his question. And so instead of answering the question, Yeshua turns the question back to this man, who he knows will parrot words, and will give you the Greek translation, the popular Greek, and then we'll look at what the Aramaic really said. And then you'll notice, after the man parrots his answer, Yeshua doesn't say, that's the right answer. What he says to the man is, you spoke the truth. And then he tells the man the question that his answer answers. And it's not the question that was asked. So remember, the question is, how do I inherit eternal life? And so Yeshua turns it back to him and says, what is written in the law? How do you read it? The man answered him saying, this is Greek, you must love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, with all your soul, and all your strength, and your neighbor as yourself. Now to that answer, Yeshua replies, you spoke the truth. He doesn't say that's the right answer. He says you spoke the truth. And then the question that answer answers, he gives to the man. And he says, do this, and you shall live. Now, is he saying to the man, excuse me, sir, you have no business asking about eternal life? You are already dead. There's no sense in you asking that question. You do not have a human life. There is not love active in you. And you just gave me the words that speak the truth about how to be human. The active presence of love must be in your mind. Your human beingness must be there when you think of the Creator, when you think of neighbor. And when that's true, you have the first key. Because you take that the next step, and they ask him, what's the first law? And this is the first key of the Aramaic Yeshua. In Aramaic, that answer isn't, you must love the Lord your God and your neighbor as yourself. Yeshua never told anybody to love their neighbor. That would be an atrocity to do to a human being. Why? Because if one has hostility and fear in them, they will bring neighbors forward who will bring up their hostility and fear. They will effort trying to love their neighbor as a verb, something they can do to their neighbor, and they will fail. It is a setup for failure to say love your neighbor. It's an impossibility.